Good morning, friends. It's been a while. We're going to talk briefly today about can body fat be melted? Can that actually happen? And in order to answer that question, we have to understand something fundamental. And I'm going to try to illustrate that here in this image. Let's take the example of a female who has 140 pounds, 5'4" height, a normal BMI of 24, and a normal body percentage of fat of 25%. So this person is a young adult, a female with normal weight, normal BMI, normal fat percentage. And if we do the math, out of those 140 pounds, 35 pounds are fat. That's how much body fat they have in their body, in their adipose tissue. Now, if we want to look more at this person and hypothetically assume that there are two scenarios possible that they can take in their life. One is they keep their weight constant for the rest of their life, more or less with some minor variability. The other scenario is that they keep gaining weight over time. And eventually they get up to 220 pounds, 5'4", the same height. The BMI this time gets to 37.8, and they have 40% of fat at this point, which translates into a total of 88 pounds of fat, more than twice the amount of fat that they had originally. And I want you to spend with me a couple of minutes, excuse me, examining the differences between these two scenarios. And the key difference that I want you to understand, and I think it's crucial for us to understand what's happening to this person under these two very different scenarios, is this. As an adult, they start with 30 billion cells, fat cells in their body. And, it depends on, in males, it could be 25, females could be 35, but after puberty, as we mature, normally we have about 30 billion fat cells in our body. And as long as we keep our weight constant, with the exception of pregnancy and some other physiological states, this number of 30 billion fat cells remains constant. It never increases. About 10% of these die every year and are renewed. But again, in the context of keeping our weight constant, this number of fat cells remains constant for the rest of our life. However, if what we put in through our diet greatly outnumbers in terms of calorie what we burn through our daily functions and exercise, what will eventually happen is that the body will recruit a number of stem cells from the bone marrow primarily. And as we gain this weight, we end up with experiencing an increase in the number of body fat cells from 30 billion to 60, 90, and in extreme cases of obesity with BMIs over 40, 45, 50, you can have people having 160 billion fat cells in their body. And number one, one of the most important things to understand is that this fat cell number can increase under the pressure of constant body weight increases. And number two, at a steady state, whether we're talking a person who's at normal weight or a person who has gained weight and then they reached a plateau, and in either of these scenarios, the weight is kept constant for a while, the proportion of fat cells, the proportion how filled those fat cells are, can be, and this is a rough number, what I gave you so far are exact numbers from the literature. This is a case study, so don't take this as literally totally always adequate, because there's a difference between tissue and tissue and person and so forth. But the important thing to remember is that at a steady state, when we don't keep gaining weight all the time, these fat cells are not 100% full with fat. They are about 2/3 full. So in both of these scenarios, again, when the weight has been stable for a while, you have these cells full at 67%, 2/3 full. Now, let's assume that this person who has reached 220 pounds starts to lose weight. And what do? They go on a diet, right? Whether it's Atkins, and you can go through the letters of the alphabet and you'll find the diet most likely starting with that letter all the way to zone. But what they all have in common, whether it's high carb, low fat, low carb, whatever else you use, what it is, it induces a caloric deficit, and you start to lose weight because of that. You burn more than you take in. And by having this caloric deficit, you start to lose weight. And when you lose weight, what happens is these fat molecules in this 100 and some billion fat cells is metabolized, is mobilized from there, is used for energy and other needs. And those fat cells, the other very important element in our discussion here is that they don't decrease in number, unfortunately. They increase in number when we gain weight, but when we lose, we don't lose these cells. They just shrink. They squeeze their fat out, but the cells are still there. And what that means is this person, if they came down from 220 pounds to 180 pounds, they still have 90 billion fat cells, as I put down in this example here. But instead of being at 67% capacity, they are down to, say, 55% capacity. And if they keep losing more, which is very hard to do, but some people manage and they get back all the way to where they were before, they still have 90 billion fat cells, but they're only at 43%, less than half full with fat. So what does that do? When these fat cells shrink, again, their number remains constant, 90 billion. Very powerful biological hormones and cell signaling molecules are released all the time that scream, fill me up. I need to get back to 60% capacity or 70% capacity, whatever it is that the body likes. And we experience this strong urge to consume more, to refill these fat reserves. And sooner or later, the person abandons their weight loss program because it got boring, life got busy, their friends invited them to a restaurant, whatever it is. And before you know it, we regain our weight, and oftentimes with a bonus, we get past 220 pounds next time around. And this yo-yoing between the high and the low is actually very detrimental for health. We are not going to discuss it now, but we can discuss that in a future instance, or you can read about it online. My point here, though, is it's important to remember that as we lose weight, after we got to this high weight here, the number of fat cells, number one, stays the same, and number two, they shrink, and that creates a strong biological urge to refill them to regain the weight. So what's the solution, you may ask? Well, here's how I look at this. Number one, if you are at a normal weight, if you are young, coming out of teenage years, and your weight is within normal parameters, this is your golden opportunity to avoid gaining weight and increasing your number of fat cells that will fight against you for the rest of your life. Number two, if you have passed that golden opportunity and now find yourself at 200, 250, 300 pounds, whatever it is, what to do? Is this cause to despair? No. What I'm telling patients is this: forget about diets, forget about temporary solutions to lose weight. What you need is a permanent change in the way you eat, exercise, and live your life. Meaning you have to adopt a diet that has little to no added fat, little to no added sugar, heavily based on plant foods with lots and lots of fiber to keep your stomach full, to prevent you from being hungry all the time and getting all those extra calories that you don't need anymore. And you need an exercise program that will burn and keep the engine running, so you keep burning calories over long term. And studies show again and again that the level of exercise that you need in order to achieve that involves walking, or the equivalent of walking, moderate intensity, at least 10,000 steps a day. Close to 15, 20,000 steps, it's easier. So this is not easy, but it can be done. There are people out there who have done this, and you can do it too. You just need to master the motivation, fuel the determination to stay on such a program long term. Alternatively, for those who have a BMI over 40, bariatric surgery, which involves reducing the size of the stomach, shunting the food away from the stomach in some way or another, achieves the same result with a bit less effort and more pronounced results overall, precisely because by reducing the volume of the stomach, it gets full quicker, and that's satiety through the inhibition of ghrelin synthesis primarily comes sooner, and you end up eating less over long term. Though is no guarantee. You still have to watch what you eat and exercise discipline, because again I see patients who had bariatric surgery, lost 100 pounds, and 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, 10 years, they've regained it all and some. The stomach can re-expand if you're not careful. And another important point that I wanted to make here is this. We live in a world dominated by, at least in the Western world, consumerism. You have all these people selling books, programs, supplements. Get on my fast 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is, weight loss program, and you'll lose all the fat, or get this gizmo from me and rub it on your belly, and in 3 weeks it will melt all your extra fat. The reality is these are snake oil sellers. So be warned and be wise. Don't go and buy this nonsense. And last but not least, I have patients often asking me when I talk to them about this, how about liposuction? They actually remove, through that procedure and similar procedures, sculpting and whatever you call it, fats from the body. Isn't that a good, valid way to reduce body fat? And while it's true that they remove adipose tissue and thus remove fat cells from the body, and in that area of the body is not typically able to regenerate them, if you don't change your lifestyle, and if you eat too many calories despite of doing that procedure, or maybe even more because you feel like I don't have those fat cells anymore, so I can indulge, right? Not really, because the body will develop more fat cells somewhere else. And your body fat distribution would look funny, would look disproportionate. So you've been warned, okay? Anyways, that's what I want to talk to you today. So what did we learn today? Number one, the number of body fat cells is constant in adulthood as long as you keep your weight constant. Number two, if your weight goes up, the number of fat cells goes up. Number three, after you have gained weight significantly, now we're not talking about 5, 10 pounds here. If you gain a significant amount of weight, when you go on diets to lose that weight, the number of fat cells does not decrease, they just shrink, and then they scream to be filled again. And inevitably, once you quit that diet, you will regain the weight. Number four, the solution is to not gain weight in the first place, or if you gained weight, to go on a permanent regimen for the rest of your life that will involve a healthy diet and exercise program that will gradually help you lose weight and maintain it without living with or being tortured by hunger all the time. And alternatively, in select cases, with the advice of your doctor, bariatric surgery can be a really helpful alternative. And the last thing, just stay wise and stay healthy, my friend, as always.